Welcome back, dear friends and students.
In this video, I am going to discuss classes and functions. Recall that in previous class, we discussed how to create new types called class and even discussed creation of objects or instance of class. Whereas in this session, we are going to discuss how to write functions that take programmer-defined objects as parameters and return them as results. Means here, say we are going to write some more functions. Even in previous class also we have discussed some functions, but here we are going to discuss about the functions, even different types of functions. How can we define objects as parameters of the function and how do we return those objects from the function. First we are going to create a class called time. So let us create a class whose name is time that records time of the day. So this is a class time. This is a doc string which will tell about what type of class is this. So this class is going to represent the time of day, and here we are going to use three attributes because time will be having three attributes. One is hour, second one is minute, and the third one is second. We can create a new time object and assign attributes for hours, minutes, and seconds. Something like this. So here time is equal to time. It will going to create a new object or a new instance of a class. Okay. So and using a dot operator, we can assign values to the attributes. As we know, there are three attributes. So I am assigning some value. Like here, time dot hour is 11, time dot minutes is 59, whereas time dot second is 30. Okay. This is an object diagram. The name of the class is time and the name of the object is time. So here this is capital T and it has got three attributes, hour, minute and second. So hour is going to point to 11, means hour has value 11, minute has value 59, whereas second has value 30. Okay. So now what we can do, once we create a class and initialize the attributes, we can write a function called print a time that takes a time object and prints it in the form of hour, minute and second. Okay, so means here we are going to write one function which will going to print that time object. That function will going to take a time as a parameter, means time object as a parameter, and it will going to print the time in the form of hour, minute and second. So this is what Python program to create time class and print the time as per the format, like say hour, minute and second. Okay, this is a class definition, class time. This is what we have seen, doc string and attributes. Now here we are going to define a function to print a time. Define print underscore time. This is the name of the function and it will going to take one object whose name is t underscore obj, means something like a time object. Okay, say colon, then say here look at this print. Say if at all I want to print say time into form, like say for example I might have given a time hour as 8 hours 29 minutes 3 seconds, but while printing I want to print everything as a 2-digit number. For that purpose we should write it as a %.2d colon %.2d colon %.2d, so that it is even one digit also it will be printed as a 2 digit, like the 3 will be printed as 03 or 8 will be printed as 08. Okay, this is the parameter name which is t underscore obj. If at all I want to get attribute r, say this is t underscore obj dot r, which will be printed here 1-to-1 mapping, and here t underscore obj dot minute it will be printed here, and t underscore obj dot second here. Okay, so to use this function and a class, here is the starting code. Initially we are going to create a time object, so by using a time function here. Okay, time dot hour is 11, time dot minutes is 59 and time dot second is 30. Print a time, it should print the time in this format. Okay, to see how this function is going to give a output, let us type this program and see the result. I will take a name of the file as time.py. So this is a Python program to create time class and a function to print time. Okay, in short I have written here. First I am going to define a class time, right? And here some doc string that represents time of the day, and so attributes are So one is hour, second one is minute, and third one is seconds. Okay, here say the doc string will start with 3 double quote and end with 3 double quotes. Now we'll write a function to print a time. So this is the definition of function. Define print underscore time. Okay, here t I'll take it as the object. Print %.2d colon, so then %.2d colon and %.2d. This has to be printed from variables or attributes here. T dot, first one is hour, second one is t dot minute, and the third one is t dot seconds. Right, this is a function that is going to print a time as per the format. And now I'll write a starting code of this program. Okay, let me create an object called a time, and here let us initialize the attributes. First one is time dot r is equal to, so let us initialize this to 8. Then time dot minute is say 59, and then time dot second is 30, and let me call print underscore time to print the time. So I am passing the object time to the function print underscore time. So means time here is argument, here t is a parameter. Now once we pass this time, using this argument, a dot operator can use to access all the attributes of the class, and we can print all the attributes in this format. Okay, so let us see the output of this. To execute this, we use Python 3 interpreter. Invalid syntax. Okay, problem is here have not closed this. Okay, here it should be seconds. Now say this is 8 hours 59 minutes and 30 seconds. Look at this. Here had given, while initialization had given only 8. Because of this %2d, it is printing as a 08. If I don't write that, like say if I just write it as a %d, then we'll get it as a 8, 59, 30. Say not in 2 digits. Okay, right. Now let us write one more function, a boolean function called is after, that takes 2 time objects like t1 and t2 and returns true if t1 follows t2 chronologically and false otherwise. Means here say we'll write one more function whose name is underscore after, should take 2 parameters, both are time objects, and return true if t1 follows t2. Means t1 follows t2 means t1 should be more than t2. That's the meaning. t1 follows t2. Okay, in that case, very simple. This is a definition of a class. Class definition remains as it is, and here is a function to check order of the time objects. Okay, so the name of the function is after, and this particular function will take 2 time objects. One is t1 and another one is t2 as parameters. Now say how do we check this? Look at this. This is very simple. If t1 dot r is greater than t2 dot r, because t1 has to follow t2 means t1 dot r should be greater than t2 dot r. So the 3 things. In terms of r, t1 might be greater, or r might be equal in t1 and t2, minutes might be greater in t1, or r and minutes both might be equal in t1 and t2, seconds might be greater in t1. In all 3 cases, the t1 is going to follow t2. That's what we are supposed to check. In first case, if t1r is greater than t2r, then obviously we need not have to check remaining things. Just based on this we can decide. That's what here we have used OR operator. If this is true, it will not going to evaluate remaining part of this expression. This will come under a short circuit evaluation. In case of logical expression, it will not going to compute the remaining part of the expression. Here, because the result is true, if it is true, whether remaining part of the expression will results into true or false, that doesn't make any difference. Because of that, it will stop here itself. Or if it is not greater, then it will come here. Okay, so let us consider if t1r is equal to t2r and it should be true, and apart from that T1 minutes should be greater than T2 minutes. If it is true, then it will not go to the next one. But if this is also false, then it will come here, it will check whether T1 are and T2 are both are equal, and T1 minutes and T2 minutes both are equal. Then it check whether T1 second is greater than T2 second. If this is true, it will come here, it will return true, otherwise it will going to return false. Okay, so this is a function is after here starting code, and so here what we have done, we have initialized T1 to 11 hour 58 minutes 31 seconds, and here 11 hour 58 minutes and 30 seconds. Obviously T1 will follow T2. When I print is after T1 comma T2, it should print true because T1 will follows T2. And remember here this function is going to take two time objects, T1 and T2. T1 and T2 here are arguments, whereas T1 and T2 here are parameters, and it is going to return a boolean variable either true or false. Okay, so before we proceed further, let us execute this program and see the result. Okay, so what I do, instead of typing everything, I am going to copy the previous one. It was time.py. Okay, this will be copied, and now vi here, say up to this it will remain same. When you say I am not going to use print function, because of that I'll just delete it, no need. Okay, now here let me define function to check order of in short I'll write T1 and T2, whether T1 follows T2. Okay, define is underscore after. Okay, say here function to is underscore after T1 comma T2. Now if T1 dot R is greater than T2 dot R, or if it is greater, well and good. If it's not greater, then T1 dot R should be equal to T2 dot R, and T1 dot minute should be greater than T2 dot minute, or T1 dot R should be equal to T2 dot R, and T1 dot minute should be equal to T2 dot minute, and T1 dot seconds should be greater than T2 dot seconds. Right? If one of this is true, then return true, else return false. And this is starting code. Say here one time object has been created. Say here I'll say first make this as T1, right, and I'll type for second object, this is T2, this is T2, and this is T2, and T1 I'll increase this one. I should call the function to check. Inside of the print I'll call print is after T1 comma T2, and whatever the return value is there, that it should print. Now you can see it is true because T1 follows T2. And not only that, here itself, say if I make this 9 and say this is 0, this is false. Oh, why it is false? Should be true. Oh, here, sorry, both are T2 here. So this should be T1. Now we execute. So it is also true. So for false also we'll see 1. Instead of this 8, if I make it 10, obviously we should get false. Right? So this is the simple program, so which is going to check whether T1 is going to follow T2. And even the same program can be written without using if statement. So we need not have to use if and else like this. Directly what we can do, here we can write a return and say remove all this. See, if any one is true, it will return true. If all are false, then only it will return false. Okay, so directly can write it as return and that boolean variable will be returned. This is because it's not a if statement, you don't require colon there, right? So it is false. And for true, I'll make this, say for example 11. So now this time it should return true, right? So because 11, 59, 30 should follow 10, 59. Okay. So earlier it was 9, because of that it was false. Okay. Even without using if and else we can do this program, right? This is what we have discussed, and next we are going to discuss one more new terminology called pure functions. Okay. The function that creates a new object, initializes its attributes and returns a reference to the new object is called a pure function. Okay, a function, so that will going to create a new object, initializes its attributes, then returns a reference to the new object is called pure function. Means pure function is a one which should create a new object and initialize its attributes and later return the reference to that object. So such a function is called pure function. A pure function doesn't modify any of the objects passed to it as arguments, and it has no effect like displaying a value or getting the user input other than returning a value. Means any function whichever we call it as a pure function, that pure function will not modify any of the objects which are passed as arguments, and it will not take any input and it will not display any value. What it does is it will just return the value. A pure function is going to return just a value, just work on the objects, not to modify it. It will return a new object, whereas it will not display anything and it will not modify the arguments that are passed to it. Okay, so below is a simple prototype of a pure function that adds two time objects. Say this is definition where it will going to add two time objects T1 and T2. When after adding T1 and T2, it will get the third time object that is stored in this sum. Like sum is equal to time, which it has created a new object. Now sum.r is equal to t1.r plus t2.r. Similarly, sum.minute is t1.minute plus t2.minute. Similarly, sum.second is t1.second and t2.second. After initializing say its attributes, it will going to return the sum. Look at this. It will not modify. What it does is it going to create. It has created a new object. It has initialized its attributes and it is going to return a reference to that particular object. So such a function where it is going to create a new object, initialize the attributes and return the reference to a newly created object is called pure function. But remember, a pure function will not modify any of the objects which are passed to it. Okay. Means here T1 and T2 should not be modified in this function. Okay, anyhow say in this function T1 and T2 are not modified. Only thing is that those T1 and T2 are accessed to create some object. To test this pure function whichever we have created, so let us create two time objects called start, something like a start time of class, and duration like a duration of the class. In turn, the function should return end time of the class. Means we are going to like add a time, is going to add anyhow say two times. So one T1 will consider as a like start of the time and T2 is duration, means time duration of some class or any event in general. Then if we add, so this is the start of that event and this is the duration of that event. If we add both, obviously we should get end time of that event. Okay, this is the function that does. Here start is a newly created object. So we have initialized this and this is starting time and this is the duration. Okay, 7 hours 35 minutes and 0 seconds. Done means this is the end time. So when that event will be finished. Add time is start comma duration. Print time, it is going to print the end time of that particular event. So before we proceed further, we can check this program by typing. Let us type and check the output of this. I am going to copy this one only. Time underscore add dot py vi time underscore add. Okay, I don't require this. Okay, here let me write a function called add time. Definition add underscore time, it accepts t1 comma t2, and here function to add two objects, okay, two time objects. Here let me create a new object called end time, which is equal to t1 dot r plus t2 dot r. First end time object has to be created, is equal to time. A new object called end time will be created, and now end time dot r is equal to t1 dot r plus t2 dot r, and end time dot minute is equal to t1 dot minute plus t2 dot minute, and third one end time dot seconds is equal to t1 dot seconds plus of t2 dot seconds. Okay, so at the end it will going to return this, return sum. Okay, here this is t1, say like for example 8 hours 59 minutes 30 seconds, and here let us consider 1 hour 2 minutes and 35 seconds. Here this will require a print time function that I am going to take from here. We are this is the function that will print a time. I'll take up this. Okay, right now say here I'll take one object called say end underscore time is equal to add time t1 comma t2, and here print underscore time, say end underscore time with this. Before I execute the program, let's see once this is the starting code of the program. Here t1 represents starting time and t2 represent duration. The starting time is 9 hour 45 minutes 0 seconds, whereas duration is 1 hour 35 minutes 0 seconds. If we add t1 and t2, we should get 11 hours 20 minutes. Let us execute and see. Oh, instead of 11 hours 20 minutes, we are getting 10 hours 80 minutes. Why? Here the result of the program is 10 hours 80 minutes, which is not what we expected, because we would have got 11 hours 20 minutes, but here we are getting 10 hours 80 minutes, which is not acceptable. So what's the problem? The problem is that the function doesn't deal with the cases where the number of seconds or minutes add up to more than 60, where it means it should not take more than 60. So whereas here it is adding up to more than 60. When that happens, we have to carry the extra seconds into the minute column and extra minute into the hour column. Means whenever the seconds is more than 60, 1 minute should be added to the minute attribute. If the number of minutes here more than 60, then 1 hour should be added to the hour attributes. That we have not taken care in the previous function. But say here we can see the improved version of the that same add time function. So this is a improved version of add time function. Here, so in this function, you can see instead of end time, here I have considered it as a sum only. Sum is equal to this, sum is equal to time. It is going to create a new object, and sum dot hours, say as usual it is going to add both the hours, but after it is going to add hour, minutes and seconds. After adding this, if the seconds, first we'll check if the seconds is greater than 60, then say we are going to deduct 60 from the seconds, and later we are going to add say 1 minute to the minute. So after adding a 1 minute to this minute, so what we do, whether that minutes is greater than or equal to 60. If it is greater than or equal to 60, then we'll subtract 60 minutes from that and add 1 hour to the sum. So obviously this is going to solve our problem. So if we see the output of this, say we'll modify the function and later we'll see it. Let us modify our function like this. This is add time. Before we end here, what we do here, if end time dot seconds is greater than or equal to 60, then end time dot seconds minus equal to, means we are going to subtract 60 from that. Okay, we'll add end time dot minute plus equal to, we add 1 minute to this, and after adding this, if end time dot minute is greater than or equal to 60, then say what we add here, end time dot minute, from the minute we are going to subtract 60 minus equal to 60, and say end time dot hour, say to this we are going to add 1 hour, right? Say here, say if the number of seconds is more than or equal to 60, we'll add 1 minute. Then if number of minutes are more than or equal to 60, we'll add 1 hour to the number of hours. Okay, so later we'll return it. Let us see what will be the output of this program after modifying or after improving the result. Earlier we had got 10 hours 80 minutes, but we should get 11 hours 20 minutes. Okay, this is the program. Okay, so this is means whatever the problem was there in previous function that we modified. So by checking if the number of seconds are more than or equal to 60, we'll subtract 60 from that and add 1 to the minute attributes, and later we'll check whether number of minutes is greater than or equal to 60. If true, then we'll subtract 60 from that and add 1 hour to the hour attribute, right? So this is going to solve our problem. One more problem here will be like, although the function is correct, it is starting to get big. Yes, so although the function is correct, but it is starting to get bigger. So we'll see a shorter code later, alternative shorter code will be there, so that we'll see, discuss a little later. Okay, so with this we're going to discuss one more important terminology called modifiers. Sometimes it is useful for functions to modify the objects it gets as parameters. Remember, pure functions will not modify any of the parameters, whereas sometimes we require to modify parameters. In that case, the changes are visible to caller. If at all we say modify any of the objects, obviously that modification will be visible to the caller function also. Functions that modify the objects which it receives as arguments are called modifiers. Remember, the functions, those will not modify the objects which they get as arguments are called pure functions, whereas functions that modify the objects which it receives as arguments are called modifiers. Means modifiers, the name itself indicates that these functions will going to modify the objects which they get as arguments. For example, let us write a function called increment which adds a given number of seconds to time objects. Let us consider a function increment. What it does is it will going to add the number of seconds to a given time objects. Okay, so a very simple function here. This is the implementation of that function. Increment is the name of the function. It will going to take two objects. One is time object and another one is just number of seconds. Here time dot second is equal to, means plus is equal to, it's nothing but time dot second is equal to time dot second plus seconds. It will going to add number of seconds to this, and once again we'll check this. If the second is greater than, means time dot second is greater than or equal to 60, we'll subtract 60 from that and add 1 to a minute. And similarly we'll check whether number of minutes is greater than or equal to 60, we'll subtract 60 from that and add 1 to this. Okay, so this is a simple function which will going to increment the time by number of seconds. The first line performs the basic operation. The remainder deals with the special cases. Means this does the basic operation and this does the special case. And special case is if the number of seconds is greater than 60, what to do. And later if the number of minutes is greater than 60, then what to do. Okay. This function works fine. Say later is you can write this function and check along with the time class. It works fine if the number of seconds is less than 120. Yes. Say after adding, if the number of seconds here is less than 120, well and good. Whereas if it increases more than 120, it will also give a wrong result, because here what we are doing, we are just subtracting 60 from this number of seconds. If I give, say for example, more than 60, like say 120 seconds, here it is going to give wrong result. Okay, then what is the solution? In that case, it is not enough to carry once, means say here we are carrying only once to the minutes. Instead of that, we have to keep doing it, means we should, if say we should check, say 60, how many 60 seconds we get, those many times we should carry 1 to the minute. Okay, so doing it until time dot second is less than 60. One solution is to replace the if statement with while statement, that would make the function correct, but say which will not be very efficient, but still we'll see that function. This is the program. Here you can see this is an improved version of the increment function to add the seconds with the time. What it does is this is the increment function. It will take time object and number of seconds. What it has been done, time dot seconds is equal to time dot seconds plus seconds. Okay, while instead of if, here we are using while, means again and again we are going to check while time dot seconds is greater than or equal to 60. If the time dot second is greater than or equal to 60, we are going to subtract 60 from that, add 1 to minute, and once again here we'll check if time dot minutes is greater than 60, then we'll subtract 60 from the minute and add 1 to the hour. This will be continued till the time dot seconds will becomes less than 60. Okay, so that say for example time dot 60 is 185 seconds. After adding this, if it is 185 seconds, 3 times this loop will going to repeat, and later you will get say time dot seconds which will be just 5 seconds. Okay, this is the starting code. Given time is, it will going to print the given time, and print the given time. This seconds, we are asking the user to enter the number of seconds. Later we are calling the function called increment second and printing the incremented time. Okay, this function is already typed. Later you can type and check. So just I'll open that function and show you the result. So the function name is vi, say it is. So first I'll show this version. This is the program. Okay, the same program what I have told so far. With if the number of seconds is greater than or equal to 60, then till the number of seconds will be less than 60, this will be repeated. So if I execute this program and show you the output, Python 3, like say given time is 8 hours 59 minutes and 30 seconds. Enter the number of seconds. If I enter say for example say 25 seconds, no problem. What we get, obviously say it is 8 hours 59 minutes and 55 seconds. Whereas if I am going to add 70 seconds, then that will be taken care, because it is 40, because 30 plus 70 will be 100, say 40 here, and 1 minute will be added to this. 59 plus 1 will be 60, and once again from this 60 will be subtracted. Because of that, this is 00 and 1 hour is added to this. Okay, try to understand what we have done. Initially we wrote a very simple function, and later say whenever we got errors, we went on rectifying, and finally we obtained a good function, even though little bit complicated, but say it is going to serve all the purpose, right? So anything that can be done with modifiers can also be done with pure functions, right? So whatever we have done with modifiers so far, even the same thing can be done with pure functions. In fact, some programming languages allow only pure functions, means most of that is actually a good practice. So most of the time that you will understand in future when you study this programming language in depth, you will understand why some of the programming languages will not allow you to write modifiers. So there is much more things about that. So as of now, you remember writing a pure functions will be better than writing a modifiers. Okay, so normally programs that use pure functions are faster to develop and less error prone. One of the important thing is when we use pure functions, writing a program using a pure function is faster to develop and less error prone, because in that case, if it's a modifier, so many functions might be modifying that object. So because of that, it may not be possible to keep track of which particular functions are modifying and which are not. Okay, but remember, modifiers are convenient sometimes. Okay, it's not that we will not use modifier functions. We'll use modifier functions wherever it is required. In general, we write pure functions. Whenever we are going to develop any code, we are going to write pure functions whenever it is reasonable, and resort to modifiers only if there is some advantage. Okay, this approach is called functional programming style. What is functional programming style is, first we'll start with writing pure functions, and wherever it is reasonable, wherever it is required, highly required, if it is giving an advantage, then only we'll write a modifiers, means we'll convert those pure functions to modifiers. This particular approach, starting with pure functions and say converting them to a modifiers as per the requirement, is called functional programming style. Okay, so what we can do as an exercise, write a pure version of the increment that creates and returns a new time objects rather than modifying the parameters. Earlier we have written an increment function which was a modifier, means it modified the object. So you write a same increment function, but it should not modify the argument, means parameter. What it should do is, it should create a new object and return the incremented time. Okay, so I hope you are going to write this function, write the whole program and test it. If you come across any difficulties, you can ask me. Right, so with this, so we'll proceed further to something called as a prototyping versus planning. The method of writing a prototype that performs the basic calculation and then testing it for any errors, later patching those errors along the way, is called a prototype and patch. So for whatever we have done is this one only. Initially we wrote a pure simple function, pure function. Later we saw that that function was giving some error, like increasing time more than 60 seconds or 60 minutes. Later we patched that program, means removed the errors. Okay, this particular approach is called prototype and patch. Means first develop a prototype, later all the errors, removing all the errors is nothing but patching. This approach can be effective, especially if the programmer doesn't have a deep understanding of the problem. Like say if the programmer doesn't know, means when we add number of seconds is going to increase more than 60. If he doesn't know the problem in advance, this was a very simple program, but whenever the difficult programs are there, if the programmer doesn't have a deep understanding of the problem, then this approach will be very effective. But incremental corrections can generate code that is unnecessarily complicated, since it deals with many special cases, and unreliable, since it is hard to know all the errors. So this is a simple and effective whenever the errors will be very simple. But sometimes when you go on fixing or patching those errors, it may leads to unnecessarily a complicated code, and later that code may become unreliable. Okay, so while dealing with such things, we should be careful. If it is very simple thing, well and good. Say an alternative to this is a designed development. This is a prototype and patch. If this is going to give a complicated code, then we can go for alternative, so which is called designed development. Okay, so what is this designed development? So in this case, a high level insight into the problem can make the programming much easier. Means the person who have got a deep understanding of the problem can go with this approach. Okay, so in this case, the insight is that the time object is really a 3-digit number in the base 60. Means the person should know that whatever the time digit number say we are going to use, that is basically a 3-digit number having a base 60. Instead of a normal base 10, a time object will be having a base 60. Okay, the seconds attribute is the ones column, means so the number of seconds, whatever in a time the seconds will be there, no, that will be a ones column, and a minute attribute will be the 60s column, and the hour attribute will be the 3600, nothing but 3600s column. Okay, here this is a base 60. So if we know that a time object is a 3-digit number, where the seconds attribute will be ones column, minute attribute will be 60s column, and hour attribute will be 3600 column. Then if you know this in the beginning, see, we wrote the program but we didn't think about this. The person who knows well about this in the beginning, they can go for the designed development approach. Directly you can implement this. Okay. Here when we wrote add time and increment, we were effectively doing the addition in a base 60, which is why we had to carry one column to next. Because we wrote improved version of add and increment, after every 60 we carried one to a say minute and later to a hour. This observation suggests another approach to a whole problem. We can convert the time objects to integer and take advantage of the fact that computer knows how to do integer arithmetic. Computer doesn't know how to do time arithmetic, means after 60 seconds it should take a 1 minute to the minute column and subtract 60 to the seconds, and if more than 60 minutes are there, then subtract 60 to the minutes and take 1 hour to the hour column. So this arithmetic computer doesn't know, whereas it knows the integer arithmetic. We can take advantage of that and we can write a simple program. What we can do is, we can write two functions, one to convert time to integer and another to convert integer to time. Like say here, time object will be given and number of seconds will be given, right? So what we do first, that say time object will be converted to integer. This is the definition of a function called time to int. What it does is, it will going to take a time object and convert that to a integers and means number of seconds, convert that to a number of seconds and return. Like say how can we do? Minutes is equal to time dot hour into 60, means how many hours are there, multiply that with 60, will get number of minutes, plus add minutes that is supplied with this, and later seconds is equal to how many minutes we get here, to that multiply 60, which will going to give number of seconds, and to that how many seconds are there in the time object, add that. Finally this seconds will be the equivalent of time object totally in terms of seconds. Return this seconds. Means what this function does is, it will going to convert a time to number of seconds. And here is a function that converts integer to a time. Okay, what it does, it will going to take seconds and convert that to a time object. Say here we are going to create a new object. Okay, minutes comma time dot second is equal to, there is a function called a div mode. What it does is, the div mode function will going to take two arguments. One argument will be divided by the second argument, means the first argument will be divided by the second argument, and it will going to return quotient and the remainder. This will be the quotient and this will be the remainder. It will return that as a tuple. Div mode is a one function which will going to take two arguments. First argument will be the dividend and second argument will be the divisor, and it will going to return a tuple where it contains a quotient and the remainder. Okay, later from the seconds we will get minutes and the remaining seconds. Afterwards the same thing will apply to a minutes. Here we'll say how many minutes will be there. To those minutes we are going to divide 60, so that we will get number of hours and then remaining minutes, and later we are going to return this time objects. I hope both the functions are clear to you. What we can do, in previously whichever the program we have written, all those programs can be tested using these two functions. Like what we can do is take a simple time object t, and to that say what we can do, we can check whether these two functions work properly or not, say by calling something like this, time to int and later int to time. Means it will be something like conversion from time to integer and back to time, so that we should get the same time back. Okay, so this is a prototype versus planning. Okay, whenever we have a deep understanding of the program, then we'll go with design the development approach, right? Say here, using these two functions, time to int and int to time, we can rewrite our earlier add time function. Recall that I was telling add time function, which we had discussed earlier, was lengthier and little bit complicated, and at that time I told that we are going to write a short code for that. Okay, this is the shorter code of add time function using time to int and int to time function. So this is the definition of function. Add time, which will take t1 and t2, two time objects. To add these two time objects, what we do initially, we are going to convert t1 and t2 to number of seconds using a function called time to int. So this function is going to take t1 as argument and returns number of seconds equivalent to t1 object, and here also the same thing. This is going to say call the function time to int by supplying t2 as argument, and this also will get a number of seconds equivalent to t2. Both the seconds will be added and stored in this object called seconds, and later we are going to use a function called int2time, which it will going to take the seconds as arguments and return the time object. Okay, that time object will be returned from this function. This version is shorter than the original and easier to verify. Let us say we'll rewrite even increment function using time to int. I have written this. I'll show and discuss that function instead of typing. Okay, so this is the complete program which we have written using time to int and into time function. Okay, this is a class definition, and this is the function to print time, and these two are functions, one which we discussed just now. So this is a function which will convert into time, and this is a function which will convert time to int. And using these two functions, we have written a increment function. So see here, increment, say what this function takes, it will take a time object and number of seconds. What we do here, we are going to convert time object to equivalent number of seconds by using a function called time to int. So these seconds and whatever the seconds here supplied, both we are going to add, and we'll get the net total seconds, and these seconds will be given as an argument to a function into to time, which it will going to convert a number of seconds to a time object, and that object will be returned from this function. Okay, so this is starting code. Here the time is 8 hours 59 minutes and 30 seconds, and we'll ask the number of seconds from the user. Later say both the time and the number of seconds will be given as arguments to this increment function. This increment function is going to return a time object that we are going to assign to this time object here, and later we'll print the same thing. I have typed this program. I'm going to directly execute that program and see the result. Okay, so let us execute that program. Name of that program is vim4e3_3.py, right? So this is the program, same program which I have discussed just now. So directly I'll execute this program using Python 3 interpreter. So this is given time is 8 hours 59 minutes and 30 seconds. If I write say 30 seconds, incremented time is 9 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds. Let me execute. If I write 35 seconds, this is 9 hours 0 minutes and 5 seconds. If I execute again, say 120 seconds, this is 9 hours 1 minute and 30 seconds. How many seconds we want? Like 3666 seconds. So in that case, it should add 1 hour here, 1 minute here, and remaining 6 seconds we should get here. So means what we should get is, we should get 10 hours and 6 seconds. Okay, 10 hours 0 minutes. Yes, it is 0 minutes and 6 seconds. Okay, alright. This is the program, a complete program which we have written using into to time and time to int functions. So I hope this is clear to all of you. This approach we can use if we have a good insight to the program. Okay, so means if we know the program statement properly, if we have a deep knowledge of the program statement, then we can write a program directly like this. If we have an insight to treat times as a base 60 numbers and make the investment of writing a conversion function like time to int and into to time, we get a program that is shorter, easier to read and debug. Even debugging will be easier, and even such a program will be more reliable. Okay, it is also easier to add features later. Okay, for example, if at all imagine that we want to subtract 2 time hours, it will be difficult. So, but the normal approach will be implementing the function using borrowing. Okay, so whereas using a conversion function, it will be very easier and more likely we will get a right output than this. Here, in case of subtraction with borrowing, say we may end up with wrong results, but here we will get a right result. Okay, sometimes making a program harder makes it easier. So when we make the program like say harder, like instead of just dealing with the time, so what we have done is we converted the time to int and later into time. We made a program harder but say more general. Harder is nothing but we made a program more general. Such programs will make easier. Okay, it will become easier because there will be fewer special cases and fewer opportunities for errors. Okay, means whenever we don't have a deep knowledge of the program statement, we can go for a prototype design, but when we have a deep knowledge of the program statement, we can go for the design development. Okay, so a designed development which we have discussed here, right? I hope this is clear to all of you. If any doubts, you can ask me and execute all the programs which I have discussed in this session.
Hope this is clear to all of you, dear students. Thank you. Thank you for watching.